Hello, everybody out there today. Episode 3 of Get Moderated. Just wanted to touch base with everybody. Taking a little bit of a beat back from the extensive information that we've been discussing over the past 2 episodes. I know a lot of what we've actually discussed has really gone over difficultly for a lot of folks. I've had a couple of people reach out and let me know that there is a dense amount of information, and I really just want to be able to take a beat here and engage with everybody that had questions, discuss anything that might be out there, and really just touch base with everyone, see where they're at, see if you had any additional questions, comments. I know we've had some pretty amazing guests so far, and just take it from there. So, the beginning of what I wanted to do was really just reach out and do a quick recap of some of what we've actually gone over so far. So, in our first 2 episodes, we discussed the CIA Gateway Project and some of the different implications that that particular publication, that particular research project would imply. First and foremost, being the creation of particles from brainwaves. That's one of the things that I find most interesting about it. Is in our world of physics, we have been able to determine that different wavelengths, different radio waves, are able to actually create and manifest photons either remotely or through the process of reverberation. In that alternative um, document, we've discovered and kind of found and stumbled upon through government funded research and things like that brain waves can also create particles. I think one of the big things that we need to differentiate here is the difference between a photon and a particle for folks that may not deep dive and ADHD hyperfixate on some wild things. Um, the a photon is effectively a non-corporeal energy state, right? It's this thing that doesn't necessarily exist as a physical matter, but instead is more akin to like a plasma or an energy phase of things. So that this is a super dull, like kind of dimmed down version of what those things mean. So please, if I have any scientists in the sidebar here, um, feel free to call me out. That's totally fine. But I'm just trying to break it down into the most digestible piece of information or the way medium of understanding, right? Particles, on the other hand, are substances that have a physical mass, have a physical weight. And so the idea that our brain waves are actually able to create a physical manifestation is really the crux of what led me to really deeper diving into this paper and this research. Hey, Courtney, thank you for joining today, and the other viewers out there. I appreciate you guys swinging in. Today is a recap episode. We went through a lot of dense information, so feel free to load up the side with questions. If you have anything relevant to what we discussed over the previous 2 episodes, or if you just have some general questions, please feel free to jump in the comment section. I'll be happy to discuss anything you guys want to talk about. But back to it, particles, physical mass, right? So we're able to actually literally manifest physical objects in our space time. Hey, honey. And we're able to really affect the universe around us with our brainwaves. I know, why no sleeves, Russ? Today I'm going a little bit more dressed than I would in my profile picture necessarily. And I know Matt's not watching, so who am I really getting under the skin of if I'm not wearing sleeves? So the basic concept that I went into this quick little like mini series on the podcast is how much we can actually impact our own universe around us through our own physicality. Now, a couple of guests we had on the first round. We had Trevor, we had Sarah, we had Rob. It was awesome. I loved having everybody on, and we were able to talk about a bunch of different things, right? We were able to talk about precognition, manifesting, remote viewing, and things like that, which I think really do kind of lend itself to the information and the experiments that were being done through the Gateway Project. The second episode, obviously, we were able to have Stacey Talish on. That was absolutely amazing. I actually very much enjoyed him. I would love to do an entire series with him. Whatever he wanted to talk about, I'd be happy to go over. Um, but we were able to get into more conversation about remote viewing and really about how space and our world around us and time are formed, right? So we talked a little bit about the way that we perceive a universe, and how when we think about dimensions and we think about the existence that we're living in now, our brains operate in a very 2D, 3D manner, right? We have time, space, and dimension that we exist and we kind of perceive and we operate in. However, we know for a fact that the universe and the world and existence is a lot wider than that. And because of that, we aren't able to necessarily tangibly express the different things that we feel and see. Now, one of the things that I think that was really interesting about our conversation with Stacey Talish was the idea that we have essentially a torus that we're existing in, this donut shape where energy comes up, it spills back down, and then recycles back into the universe. Now, that right there could get into a much deeper conversation, which I would actually really like to get into, around precognition, remote viewing. Um, and there's a little bit of a difference between precognition and premonition, right? So, precognition being that you can see and you can cognitively understand. That's like fortune telling and prophecy and things like that. Whereas premonition is more of a instinctual thing where you feel something coming and you aren't necessarily able to cognitively express that. Now, in this model that we have of our universe now, it's entirely possible for precognition, remote viewing, ESP, and things like that to be an expression of a dimension that we don't fully understand. Because of the way that we are now learning our universe, we understand that although we perceive time and space as very linear, in fact, it is much more complicated than that. And so, as we move forward in science to understand that time is not as linear as we like to pretend, and time is not as linear as we like to think, that it would be very reasonable. Honey, so my wife has chimed in and asking if they don't, if what if we don't fully understand what you're saying? Then get in the comment section. Tell me to stop. Tell me to clarify. I absolutely love explaining this stuff. Data dumping is an ADHD or an autistic's favorite thing to do. So please feel free to hop into the section and ask clarifying questions. So as we discover that the world we're existing in isn't necessarily as linear as we like to believe, right? Time is moving backwards and forwards. We're just progressing along that line directionally, right? So we are moving in a very linear way, whereas time itself is in a constant state of contraction and expansion. Hey, Chief. Hey, Denise. Our concept of time is purely a social construct. I'll agree with half of that. I don't think it's necessarily a social construct. I think it's a construct that our three-dimensional minds have used to digest and really interpret a four or five-dimensional existence. And sometimes when we're going right, when you think of dimensional interplay, right? And now I'm not talking about Marvel Universe dimensional. I'm talking about physical dimensions. Like, so you play the 2D Mario game, two dimensions, right? You got that nice linear side scroller game. And then you jump over to something like a Skyrim or I don't know what's a popular game. I think Helldivers is a really popular game right now, or whatever. You move into a more modern game where there's 3D interaction. Now you have things. Oh no, the Gregorian calendar is, I would say, more of an oppressive construct. Yeah, no, the idea of time is very much a social construct. I totally agree, Denise. Um, but our brains are constantly bombarded with information from a non-linear existence, right? And so, although we are moving in that way, it's very possible for different intersect points, different moments that are existing simultaneously to impact our consciousness, to essentially touch our understanding. And so a simple idea and theory. And again, from here on out, it's pretty heavily theory, not a lot of science backing up any of these claims. But when we begin to see these things like remote viewing, precognition, premonitions, and things like that, and experiencing spirits, right? Experiencing this concept of a consciousness that is inhabiting a space or a zone outside of its time, it's very easy to think, one, like, oh, it's just ghosts. But then if we look deeper into our understanding, could it be more, right? Could it actually be an expression of a nonlinear existence, right? Where we are existing, they are existing, and I hate to use this phrase, but everything, everywhere, all at once. And so there are just these intersect points that we're able to connect to and we're able to actually experience. And unfortunately, our brains aren't capable of fully understanding what we're experiencing. So to figure it out and to make it palatable to our understanding, it's now been digested in a different way. So we see a spirit, we see a ghost, we have premonitions, we have precognition, we have remote viewing and things like that. Now, to me, remote viewing is the intentional touching of a different intersect point, right? We are intentionally reaching out to a different moment in time, a different a a different point along the same horizon, but on a at a different time. And I don't know that I'm actually expressing that very clear or comfortably. So anybody in the comment section, feel free to jump in with a clarifying question, because what I've said so far, I think could stand to use a little clarification for someone that isn't inside my head. I do appreciate you guys staying chattered on the side there, though. I am running solo right now, so please bear with me if I'm not putting up your comments. Um, all right, so there are indeed theories of living hauntings where living people have seen their younger selves in such. Yeah, it's. I mean, this is exactly what I mean, and so the times in which I think that we are experiencing another consciousness externally, right? So there isn't a hard interaction. There isn't a two-way interaction. To me, it's similar where you have to have a positive and a negative to connect to electricity. You have to have both need to be in the place in which they are open to that connection. And I think that a lot of the time, if we really think about our own lives and we really think about who we are and how we're moving through our own lives, we are shut down to a lot of those connections, right? We are locked off. We are in our own little world. We aren't moving through this world in an open way where we welcome those communications, we welcome external connectivity. So now we're in a situation where we, in our everyday life, me in my weird shirt right now, speaking into an odd machine, could be viewed or experienced by someone else on a parallel moment in our existences. And because I'm so focused on my camera and I'm focused on my microphone and I'm focused on my task at hand, I'm tuning out the experience. Hey, Bob, thanks for joining us. And so whoever's on the other side attempting to reach out only catches an echo of my existence. They don't actually get to interact with that consciousness. They don't get to actually feel that, right? And so I think it speaks a lot to especially nowadays where we have individuals that aren't very open, right? We're moving through life. We're very hyper focused on what we have to do, and we're super task oriented, and we aren't taking that moment to just open up. Hey, good evening, Jenny. How are you? Oh, Matt is watching. Now, of course, I said something. I say something earlier in the podcast about Matt not watching, and that's why I wore sleeves. Yeah, Matt, I this has already been covered. And so to kind of put a button on the explanation about what we've actually talked about. Hey, Andy. Um, really how our minds are existing in a very linear way. But unfortunately, where it is existing is in a very mixed up, jumbled, tangled web of time, space, physicality, and consciousness. So really we aren't. Oh, yeah. Here we go. How do you protect yourself and at the same time open to communications? So, Bob, this is a really good question, and I've had pretty extensive conversations with anyone that would listen about my personal perspective on the malicious spirits, right? Now, I want to make this very clear. I'm not talking about cryptids. I'm not talking about um, astral deities. I'm not talking about anything along those lines. When I'm what I'm about to talk about is strictly the concept of in dealing with the supernatural, paranormal, in the idea of hauntings, in the idea of ESP, precognition, the concept of spirit guides a little bit, not so much. The idea of entities existing throughout eternity and taking an interest in us, the idea that somehow that they would inherently be malicious, I think is an incredibly arrogant perspective. Um, Especially if we believe that they would be malicious towards us. I think a lot of the interactions that we have that we deem as negative actually stem from the negativity that we bring into that experience, into that communication. Whether it's our own insecurities, it's our own trauma, it's our own problems. I think one of the best ways to insulate yourself from negative energies or negative spirits is to do your best to exercise your own negativity, right? A healthy degree of self-awareness and a healthy understanding of your own inner turmoils, I think cleans up a lot of experiences people have. I've actually had conversations with Rob about this, with Sarah about this, um, with Matt and my wife, obviously. I don't necessarily think that any of us, and this is going to be a bit of a, this isn't a hot takes or unpopular opinions episode, but I think a lot of the time, especially when we hear from like demonologists and exorcists and things like this, you know, my question always boils down to why do we think we as individuals are super important enough? Like, and my favorite thing is when people say like they were possessed by the devil. Like the devil. Like that one person in Oklahoma is so critical to the celestial war between God and Satan that Lucifer took a moment out to target this one individual. That to me requires a degree of arrogance that I just can't wrap my head around. Um, all right. So how do I keep myself safe? I try to acknowledge myself as much as possible and what negativity I might be bringing into a situation. I think that that's one of the healthiest ways for us to protect ourselves from negative energies, but also I think it's also one of the healthiest ways to move through our life, right? Like is just try to stay super diligent and vigilant for your own traumas and your own issues and what's really eating you alive. And if there are malevolent beings out there that are attempting to enter our space and attempting to influence our lives, I can't help but think that unresolved trauma or guilt or anger or frustration or hatred, um, yeah, poor Betty from Boise, devil got her again. Um, I think that those are going to be the easiest entry points for a malicious spirit to target us. And that right there, I think, is one of the most important things to do is make sure that you're taking care of yourself emotionally and mentally, to prevent breaks in that armor. All right. What does it mean when you see people or dark mists when others don't? Almost as if the person doesn't want, I'm assuming want you to see it. They keep walking or end up disappearing. Um, Again, guys, this is all my own personal opinion. I talk a lot of science and theory, but I am not in any way, shape, or form an authority on any of this. Um, but I think a lot of the time, this is why I carry the belief that I do. I think a lot of experiences people have wouldn't necessarily be experienced by other people there as well. I've never questioned someone's experience. I've never said that, nope, you didn't experience that whatsoever. My thing is, I don't know that I would have experienced it if I was standing next to you. And I don't know that anyone in the room would have experienced it standing next to you. And so when we have these one off apparitions where you have a group of people looking down the same corridor and only one of them experiences something, there's an unfortunate statistic probability. And then there is the potential for unexplained, right? And so obviously, I think one of the most dismissive and cynical perspectives is simply you're in a dark room, your brain is trying to make patterns out of things, and that one person's experience very much could have been their brain doing a better job of pattern recognition in an otherwise chaotic environment, and just manifesting something that wasn't there. Now, the flip side of that is the unexplained. So realistically, our brains are on different wavelengths, right? We don't all have the same sensory perceptions. We don't all have the same attunements. We don't have all the same experiential backgrounds. And we don't all walk with the same level of openness or exploratory, genuine, naive, exploratory happiness, right? Like we're not all walking through the same place excited to see something or very open to an experience. And so there may actually be circumstances where an entity or a energy is there and present, and you're just more attuned to it. You're just more primed to have that communication, more open to the universe's experience. And so you're able to actually experience something when no one else in the room does. And so I think I think it's very scattered, right? It's a really difficult question to ask is, you see those dark shadows move. You see movement, you hear things and things like that. So I think that it really does depend on the circumstance and the individuals involved. So, have there been times where I've seen things and no one else in the room has? Yeah, I mean, 99% of the time, probably I will write it off as my brain just saw something moving in the darkness that no one else did, and that was because my brain couldn't conceptualize that degree of darkness, and it wanted to find some kind of pattern that it recognized. There have been other times I've seen things that no one else did, and I thought, you know what, hey, that one was for me, right? Um, I just was attuning at a wavelength that that energy reverberated with, and so I was able to experience something somebody else wasn't. So I think it's really important, Levon, to make sure that when we're going into a situation with skepticism, we are also going into it with compassion, right? Just because I see it doesn't mean you do, and just because you do doesn't mean I do. And neither of those things mean that we're, experiencing psychosomatics. Um, but it could just be that. It just could be our brains are making things that aren't there because we can't understand it. Um, and Denise, some folks are prone to hysterics or attention or both. So the danger is psychosomatic. I couldn't agree more. There are folks, I think a lot of the time, and it goes back to um, Bob's question, right? How do you protect yourself? I think priming yourself is one of the most important things. And when you are primed to experience something, and you're going to experience something and you feel you're going to experience something and you don't experience something, your brain already has this mold created. And it goes back to what we discussed in the first two episodes. We will then manifest something to meet the expectation of our minds. I think it goes back to as well this concept of self-fulfilling prophecies, right? If we know we're going to have a bad day when we wake up, we're going to have a bad day. And so whether you want to look at manifestation as a physical thing, a spiritual thing, giving the universe an energy thing, which is one of my favorite topics by Stacy. If you have a moment, review some of his stuff about pushing energy and pushing manifestation into the universe. It's actually a really good conversation that he has. And he's terrible about marketing himself, right? He's admit that multiple times. So I will market on his behalf. Hey, Beth, thank you for joining us. So yeah, I think that's the primary questions we've gotten in the side chat so far. Does anybody else have anything, any questions, anything about the dense material we've gone over for the past couple of weeks, I guess? Nice little 1 hour snippets. But besides that, I really want to go into some more things. I could probably do a couple of months on the different CIA projects and the different intelligence agencies, the alphabet soup, the little three-letter armies, research into the paranormal and the supernatural and things like that. But I want to make sure that the information that we're getting out there, one, makes sense, and two, isn't giving some kind of false expectation or false ideals about what the paranormal is, right? And so one of the comments I made to Stacy, which he had just immediate knee-jerk reaction, which is totally understandable, is when we were discussing remote viewing and things like that, I brought up the movie Men Who Stare at Goats, which to me is a parody of what that is. It's not intended to be a documentary or very realistic expression of what those studies were or what the people involved were doing. Um, but based on the reaction and some of the things that people were saying in the side, a lot of people took that real. They took that as kind of not necessarily a parody, but a caricature, just a mild modification of what was actually happening. All right, Bob's got another question here. I know how I feel, but curious how you feel as far as religion and paranormal. Um, I think that to think that the paranormal and religion need to be mutually exclusive is wild to me, especially when we go to the Judaic Christian faiths. From a strictly biblical perspective, right? When we pass the idea of when we get into the Old Testament, we get into the original basis of the Torah and things like that in the Christian faith. A lot of us tend to forget that when we die, we actually don't go into heaven, right? According to Judeo-Christianity, right now, there's only like three people in heaven. It's Jesus, the thief, and God. Those were the three that reside in heaven. Jesus obviously saying upon the cross, "You shall be with me in heaven by the end of this day." And then further on in the New Testament, it's discussed that the souls reside in the tabernacle until the second coming, right? So the tabernacle, also another word for covenant being something that's physically on earth. There is now this biblical comment saying that the spirits are stuck here on earth in the physical until the second coming of Christ, until he opens the gates of heaven and lets everyone in. Now, the Judaic faith as well, I mean, they're waiting for the first coming of the Messiah, which will bring the sword and fire. But the same rules apply. There shall be a cleansing of the earth of the sin and the degradation against God. All of the righteous souls will then be tucked away in a nice, safe little space. And then when the second coming comes, that's when everyone will get access to the gates of heaven. And so, from a Judeo-Christian lens, I can't speak to Hindi or Buddhist or anything along those lines, although Buddhism does talk at great length about the spiritual existence of man on earth. I am by no means an authority or well versed enough to have that conversation. But from a Judeo-Christian perspective and the paranormal, I think that they are very much in tandem. I think the messaging behind Christianity is this stuff is bad, but also that it's here. I think that's more of a modern interpretation of a lot of it. And when you look at the religious expansion throughout Europe, the idea of cryptids and pagan holidays and things like that being completely assimilated into religions. Um, I think the idea that religion would hold sway over the paranormal or anything like that. I don't think that it's there. I think we go far enough back, predating a lot of these organized faiths, a lot of these organized religions. The war against cryptids and paranormal and demons and evil spirits and the jinn and all of these other things come from a place of belief and spiritual strength, not necessarily religious strength. So, knowing who you are, knowing what you are and what you're about, plays more of an active role in combating these evil spirits and combating these demonic entities than it does what text you follow. Hope that answers the question, Bob. All right, got another one here from Denise. I question why any subject in government study would truly put abilities on display considering possible ramifications. Well, I mean, if we want to look historically and geopolitically, don't really care about putting them on display as long as we can weaponize them. I mean, you figure the splitting of the atom was the greatest single moment outside of the most recent positive cold fusion reaction, energy positive cold fusion reaction. It was the greatest step forward for humanity in energy production and science technologies. And instead of providing lights to the world and running water and clean habitable land space, we decided to throw it into Fat Boy. What was it? Fat Boy and Little Man. So we don't always use the applications as we should. Um, but we are always, as a species, looking to be able to weaponize anything that we can. And so when the three-letter armies get out there and start studying this stuff, it is strictly for the application of espionage and warfare. Um, no one's doing it for the greater good. All right. I actually need to take a sip of water here. That coffee's not actually drying me out. This is, I think, one of the longest unfettered moments I've had to just info dump in a while. I'm enjoying it. Thank you, everyone, for being in the comments section and watching. I appreciate you. So, with that stuff being said, I think I want to discuss a little bit about how I want to move forward with the podcast and really talk to you guys as critical members of the show, right? I get to have a little fancy microphone that is not as fancy as I'd like it to be, but also you guys are the ones that are watching, right? So I'm not creating this content so I can just stare into a blank screen and get on a microphone. I've got a couple of things lined up. I really want to do some information on the historical data of cryptids in New England. I also want to talk about the concepts of star seeds and things like that, because I've had people talk to me about it and it's gone over my head, and so I want to do a deep dive into that stuff and really bring some information to light. So anything you guys have questions on, I am absolutely someone that likes to dive into things and just learn as much as I can. So if there is anything out there that you guys have been curious about, anything that has kind of itched your mind, but you haven't had the time to really run it down, please throw it in the comments section. I'll be happy to look at it tonight, tomorrow, and get more information on those topics so that they can be future discussions. Also, anybody out there that wants to talk, I am here. I've got the last 20 minutes that I very intentionally did not plan on occupying, so that anybody that out there that wants to step up. Oh, Bob, I am Ian. I am the moderator. So I actually got to know Rob and Sarah at the East Coast Paracon last year, which is coming up again over at Heartstuff Hall in Rockland, Massachusetts. But I actually am a odd skeptic. I got a lot of eclectic beliefs and theories, but I am absolutely a STEM guy. Hey, Kaylee. And so whenever I want to discuss anything or really run anything down, I try to do it from the most scientific perspective possible. I try not to indulge too much in my own personal feelings, but and try to instead try to anchor it in repeatable processes and get some kind of repetitive results before I say anything's there. Oh, excellent. Bob, you're over at Heart Stuff. I love it. Which event were you at? And then I'm just going to stay quiet I have a as I have a conversation with the sidebar chat. All right. Anyway, so I'm going to throw out the link here. If anybody wants to hop up, you can feel free to join in. Really expand the conversation. If anybody has anything to say, there's a few of you out there I know. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Matt was telling me about that, Bob. I hope you found the hall active. It's been getting a lot more vibrant as of late since we've had a lot of people coming in. I am part of Warner Paranormal Preservation Society. My wife is the one that does a lot of the events. I guess I don't know. She does the murder mystery night. I enjoy helping out with private rentals and things like that. And of course, Matt has the East Coast Paracon coming back in 2 weeks. Actually, 2 weeks from today and yesterday. Sunday, May 19th, we're going to be hosting an open event over at the Heart Stuff Hall. And we'd love to see you guys there, obviously. But yeah, no, that actually was one of my first locations that I actually took a very serious investigation approach to. Had a ton of fun with it, have had amazing experiences there that have repeated, and been able to get feedback from private rentals like you guys on what the experiences you've had there, and then trying to experience them myself or replicate them or have our team see it. So thank you. You're doing some good work there. I appreciate you coming to the hall. We're really dedicated to making sure that that thing stands the test of time. It's built in 1899 by the wives of Civil War veterans, as a place for their husbands to come congregate and really just deal with PTSD the only way they knew how back then. So thank you for coming out. I greatly appreciate you. And again, I got the link in the description here in the comment section if anybody wants to come up. Otherwise, I'm just going to start talking about some of the awesome things we have going on right now. So right now, I don't know if anybody has checked out the Warner Paranormal Preservation Society. You can check us out at warnerparanormal.com. Right now, we do actually have a fundraiser going on. If you check us out, we actually have it in our store. We have this awesome little Funko Pop thing here that my wife was able to put together, which we are selling. Selling, I guess I don't want to call them raffle tickets, but with a $10 donation, you actually have the chance to win this little Ouija board Funko Pop. My wife loves Funko Pops. I hope you guys do too, because the more money we raise for the hall, the longer we get to hang out there, the longer we get to use that space for our investigations, as well as really preserving the history of our area. So I appreciate it, guys. If you could all 90 run over there and throw a little $10 donation over to the Heart Stuff Hall, we would appreciate it. All right, so I'm going back to everybody. If again, any questions, any ideas you guys have, please throw them in the comments section. I can't see who's watching, so I can't call anybody out. Denise, I know you're probably still out there, and you always have questions. But I do want to thank Levon. That was an absolutely awesome question. Thank you for that earlier. Bob, you as well. Thank you so much for your engagement. Trevor, just hiding out there, not saying a word. Ted, I didn't see you join. Thank you for popping on here. Kaylee, thank you for joining us here. I greatly appreciate you listening to the ramblings of somebody that's just just a nobody, right? That's what's great about this is I have no skin in the game. I've got no brand behind me. I've got nothing. I can be honest, right? And I think that that's half the fun here. So I think moving forward, I am going to proceed with the little bit of a deep dive into the concepts of star seeds, star children, whatever you actually want to call it, where and again, if anybody knows more about this than me, please jump in the combat section. Mr. Nobody, that's what I'll change it to. Um, the concept of celestial or alien or foreign or transuniversal beings that are shifting through our reality, right? Trying to better our experience and better our humanity as they gain some kind of perspective. Um, well, if Julie was in the comment section, she'd be chiming in right now, wouldn't she? You can call her out on that one for not hopping on today's. Um, Oh, well, we'll speak for her, Kim. Don't worry. All right, Denise, if you insist, what are your views about manifested energies contaminating investigations? Example, getting a desired response because someone wants it so. So I think that that actually ties into the gateway papers that we were discussing for the previous 2 weeks really, really well because we can manifest things. We have proven that. We have that does happen, right? It's all still technically hokum, and I don't do affirmations into the mirror every morning, but the reality is we do have an ability to manifest not only experiences, but physical experience, like physical experiences and perceptual experiences. Um, One of my favorite things is sensory deprivation. If you are not even remotely comfortable with where you are, emotionally, mentally, and things like that, sensory deprivation can absolutely be torture. It can be a literal hellscape of all of your worst nightmares jumping down on you all at the same time. And so when you're a little bit calmer and when you're a little bit more open to receiving as opposed to pushing out, I think it's a lot calmer and a lot more beneficial. It's more of a meditation. But when we go into locations and things like that, that's why I hate knowing histories. I don't know anybody else out there. Please feel free to chime in your preference. I don't like knowing the histories of the locations that I go into prior to an investigation. Um, I like knowing when it was built. I like knowing that there isn't asbestos in the tiles. But I don't want to know who died there. I don't want to know who lived there. I don't want to know what other people have experienced because I think that that really does contaminate the experience overall. When you are constantly on the lookout for a duck, you will find a duck. That is one of the things that I don't remember when I heard it, or why it was. Yeah, there's always asbestos. That's a fact. Um, but the idea that you're out there and you're expecting something, you are going to manifest something akin to what you expect. That goes back to earlier when I was talking about the evil spirits and evil energies lingering in a home. I think that most of the time that is just a reflection of someone's energy that's in there with you or you themselves. Yeah, Kaylee, let the location speak for itself. Andy wanting to see it themselves. Um, Kim, my wife, not wanting to see it at all, but there anyway. Um, I think that the things that you bring into an investigation are going to greatly impact how that investigation goes. If you go into it with that expectation, you're going to find a duck. That's just how it is. Because if anybody out there right now, if you really think about it, when was the last time you saw a duck? Like when you actually saw a duck, they're very common. They're in all 50, well, all 48 continental states. I don't know how many ducks are in Alaska. Um, but I promise you, if you take the next 30 days and you just think every day, I'm gonna see a duck. It's gonna take about a week, but you'll see a duck. And investigations are the same thing. Oh, there's this apparition that hangs out at the end of the hallway holding a hatchet. Well, if you go to that place and you've heard that story and you do it enough and you try it enough, well, by God, you're probably going to see somebody at the end of the hall with a hatchet eventually. Hope that answers your question, Denise. So this 45 minutes has gone by incredibly fast for me. Um, I'm sure it's gone terribly slow for my wife because this is the voice and level of just data dumping I do to her on a regular basis. And she doesn't even ask me questions. I just do this on my own. Um, so thank you guys. Please, seriously though, I would like you guys to take a look. We are doing a bunch of different fundraisers over at Warner Paranormal over the coming weeks. Um, and I actually believe we have a couple of booths still open for our Parafair, our Northeast Expo. Um, and I think I'm calling it the wrong thing. It's just the Wicked Piss of Spring Fair. It's not actually the Para Expo. Um, and if Matt was still on, he'd probably be correcting me in the comment section. But we do have that. We have mediums, tarot, a bunch of different vendors. It's always an excellent time. I'll be there, obviously. Russ Stiver of Unturned Pages is going to be there. Matt Warner of Unpopular Opinions is going to be there. We do have a bunch of folks that are going to be present. I'm probably going to be sleeveless collecting tickets at the door. But outside of that, guys, please, please, please check out warnerparanormal.com / upcoming events to check out what we have coming in the next few months. We also have our Murder Mystery Night, which is going to be launching here soon. And then Julie, whose last name I refuse to pronounce on recording, hosts a weekly mediumship circle in that location. So we are actively engaging the energies in that building. We are actively seeking experiences that are repetitive. And she has been having absolutely wonderful evenings over there with small group circles and leading those mediumships. So definitely check that out if you are in the area. I know a lot of you guys are coast to coast, so I appreciate you joining us. Trevor, are you out there still? Because as I failed, I want to make a public apology to Trevor here real quick, and I'm hoping he could hear it. But he actually posted the lineup for Sunday's events. I failed to deliver a graphic for my show or to let anybody know I was still having it. So if anybody's seen the Get Haunted page today for the Sunday shows, I'm just teasing him. We're having a good time with that. And I do apologize to him because he is really trying to spearhead and make sure that all of our shows are getting out there and you guys know what we're doing. So yeah, it's actually funny, Denise. One of the things that Stacy and I were talking about last week was the idea that we are existing in a black hole, in a massive universal scale black hole, which is why our space is ever expanding, and there are signs of it at one point having contracted. And then the idea that wormholes, right, is just this idea of this fifth dimension that is connecting different spaces and times. And we're having those parallel moments. We're having those intersects between all the different points in our existence, everything simultaneously at once, right? Everything everywhere all at once. Yeah, I mean, I'd love for us to be able to use wormhole technology, but honestly, I'm still pissed off about the Jetsons cars. It's 2024. We're supposed to be flying right now, right? We're not supposed to have tires. Where we're going, we don't need roads. That was the future I was promised by Doc and Marty. Nothing. All right. We just lost a second of time. Bob, if you've been with this whole thing, you've lost way more than a second, man. I don't know what to tell you. But with that, guys, unless you guys have any other questions out there, unless you have anything you want to share, I am going to wrap up a couple minutes early. I got a couple things I need to knock out tonight. So I am going to do the proverbial last call for questions. And then I am looking forward to next week. I have decided I'm going to go with star seeds on this one. That's what we're going to do for next week. We're going to go over just the theory behind that, the ideas behind that, the mythos, whatever you actually want to call it. And then depending on how far I manage to get dig, I might have some scientific things to discuss about that instead of just theory and belief. Bob, likewise, excellent meeting as you. Awesome questions tonight. Thank you so much. Hope I didn't alienate too many people with my personal opinion. Levon, I'm actually really glad I caught you. You caught me live as well. I have a ton of fun with this stuff. I have no idea who I'm going to have on as a guest next week. I will probably reach out to Julie. She is also part of the Warner Paranormal Preservation Society. That is a mouthful. But she does have beliefs in that space and opinions in that space. So I might have her on just to kind of talk about her perspective and things like that. So, all right, everybody, whatever deity or energy that you look up to, I hope they bless you this week. And we will see you again next week. Thank you, guys. Moderator signing off.